I and my project team were retained to do the study, a review of street checks in Edmonton. Just briefly, I'll highlight some of the areas that we took a look at. And again, as you know, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding police street checks across the country. The project was multifaceted in terms of the methods that we used. Like I said, we looked at the file data, we did interviews, we ran focus groups, and we did a limited number of field observations with patrol officers and beat officers. The final report also includes a review of the literature on street checks and raises some serious questions about the validity of the research that has been done to date. In terms of the community, the themes that came out of the focus groups and the interviews with the communities of diversity was that there's a lot of confusion about street checks. There was a perception that EPS officers did engage in biased policing and racial profiling. That's a perception. That officers on occasion abuse their discretionary powers in doing so. There was also a concern in the community that street checks did not reflect what we refer to as procedural justice. That means when an officer comes into an encounter situation with an individual who's been stopped, that the person doesn't feel they were treated fairly. Common words that we heard to describe the situation were lack of respect towards me and dehumanization. And I should also add, in addition to adults, we also ran focus groups with street-involved kids. And that's a message that we heard from the kids as well. So it seems like an issue that is as important as street checks themselves is the dynamic of what goes on in the street check. And I don't think that's been given enough attention in the research that's been done and in the dialogue that's been done to date. The report concludes with a number of recommendations that we have made to address this situation, both in terms of improving the level of engagement between the Edmonton Police Service and communities of diversity, but also to address the issues that surround street checks.
A few hours ago, the Edmonton Police Commission released an independent report on the topic of street checks. The Commission hired an external consultant from Vancouver to examine a series of issues relating to street checks and to identify potential recommendations. An important highlight that the researchers concluded was that street checks are a valuable tool for police officers as they contribute to the overall safety of the community. They recommended that street checks remain in place and cited several issues that can arise if street checks were to stop or for police community engagement to be reduced unnecessarily. As outlined, they found no evidence that the street checks themselves or the Edmonton Police Service officers conducting them were racially biased. This important conclusion was articulated in 3 separate parts of the report. They did, however, suggest that we invest time and effort in educating the public on our reasons for interactions and on better explaining what we are doing during the course of those interactions.